Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you to the event tonight. Very important event. My name is Alan Delisle. I'm the City Development Administrator, and I'll be hosting the event tonight. And the first thing that I would like to do is introduce Mayor Kreisman for him to say a few words about the Trop redevelopment and what is occurring tonight. Mayor?
Thank you, Alan, and good evening, everyone. I want to thank all of you for being in attendance here tonight. A special thanks to my city team for their effort in making tonight and this week possible. Now, this isn't the first time that we've engaged the public related to this site. Public engagement goes back many years, including the master planning process that occurred during my first term as mayor. This also isn't the last time that we'll engage with the public on this site. You see, this site has a long, deep history in this city. Many promises were made, promises which remain unfulfilled. And it's because of the history and unkept promises that the public, our residents, our business owners, and any other interested stakeholders must be involved every step of the way until the last ribbon is cut on this site. The elected officials in St. Pete and in Pinellas County represent you, the public. We do not represent the developers, the Tampa Bay Rays, or anyone else who might be looking to do something that isn't aligned with the pursuit of our brightest future. We are committed to ensure that the mistakes made in the past are not repeated. Our vision statement is clear on this. It says that we will honor our past as we pursue our future, and that's the goal here. We must do right by those who came before us, and we must do right by the next generation. Now, we have 4 development teams who understand our vision. They have poured a lot of time, energy, and money into their proposals, and I am grateful for their interest and for their partnerships with local leaders and businesses. You see, St. Pete is a city on the rise, and these final 4 serious developers who come to us from across the country each recognize that they won't succeed without community leaders at the table, without this being a people-powered process. They also recognize that they must be flexible enough to accommodate the existing stadium and baseball team, along with redeveloping the site with or without a new stadium. Now, given that this is a generational endeavor, that it will take many years, could be 10 or even 20 years, for this site to be fully developed, the uncertainty related to the Rays is not an obstacle. The city of St. Petersburg, these development teams, our residents, all want to move forward and begin the process that will ultimately lead to jobs, housing, and green space, along with many other exciting opportunities. Again, this is a generational project. Many mayors, many city council members will come and go before redevelopment is complete. But we must start somewhere. I don't know about you all, but I'm tired of looking at a desert of concrete in the middle of our downtown. I want to see activity. I want to see opportunity for the residents of this community. So tonight is about listening and learning and asking questions and then learning a little bit more. We want your feedback. We need your feedback. So thank you all again for being engaged and helping the sun to shine brightly on us here in the Berg. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Alan. Alan?
Mayor Kreisman, thank you very much for that introduction and laying the foundation for this exciting event tonight. Some of us are just thrilled to be in this position where, we started planning and thinking about this many years ago. The mayor and the council, a lot of input, a lot of discussions, a lot of studies, and what resulted into 2 master plans, one with the stadium and one without the stadium, and the embodiment of 21 principles in that RFP, which I think these developers will probably indicate tonight was not an easy RFP to respond to. It was demanding. 21 principles that you all, the public, indicated to us were important. We embodied those after many discussions with council members. and put that out into the marketplace. And we have 4 outstanding development teams that responded to that and created a vision in line with those 21 principles. But it is really up to you tonight. The purpose of tonight's meeting, as the mayor indicated, is for you to listen, but for you to ask questions, and for you to really ask the question, which developer is going to execute those 21 principles the best for the city for many years to come. So having said that, I am excited about tonight, and I'm excited to get the show on the road. Before I do that, before I introduce Alex, let me just explain a few technical issues moving forward. Each development team will have 15 minutes, no more than 15 minutes. We'll be pretty strict on the time frame. We will allow questions from the community. You can input your questions at any time during anybody's presentation. Just through the Q&A button on your computer, just log in the question. We have a team processing those questions, and we will have Brian Caper asking those questions once the presentations are completed. So all 4 developers will go, they'll present for 15 minutes, and then we'll open it up for an hour for questions and answers. And that'll all be done through Brian. When the developers answer the questions, we'll ask the developers to stick to 3 minutes in answering those questions. We want them to be succinct, but we don't want the development teams to carry on for a long period of time. We want to make sure that this is fair to each development team. So we will be, again, strict with the time limits. As I said, questions can be submitted at any time using the Q&A function on the Zoom platform. You can submit a question at any point during the meeting. Staff will acknowledge that your question has been received, so you will get a notice of that, and then Brian will follow through with that. We also have a timekeeper, so we will be giving each development team a 3-minute warning. Within their 15-minute presentation, we'll give them a 3-minute warning, and then we will let them know that we are cutting off their mic. We don't mean to be too hard on you guys, but we've got to keep this fair to everybody. So having said that, let me turn it over to the first development team to give their 15-minute presentation, and that is Midtown Development and Alex Vadia. Alex? Alex, do we have?
Yes, I'm here.
There you go.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for sitting down and afternoon and taking the time to listen to all us developers. One thing that, so Midtown Development, Alex Vadia, Managing Principal, Midtown Development. One thing that, a little bit about Midtown Development, we are a family-oriented, long-term investor that develops. We are very proud of our portfolio. Sorry, am I supposed to say which slide or?
I can move you, Alex.
Oh, you can?
Yes.
Okay. So just, bear with me. I'm not the best public speaker, and, I hope this is not judged, our project's not judged on my personal public speaking, but I think we've put together an amazing team, and for all fairness to them, I want to do the best job possible here, even though it's outside my strongest expertise here. I'll just tell you a little bit about Midtown Development, introduce then one of our lead team members and professional that will tell us a little bit about the vision. Midtown Development, as you can see in the slide, this is one of our largest projects to date, which is Midtown Miami. And I think, again, what I think separates us, and we're very excited, and we're a very unique situation that we can invest long-term. So by investing long-term, our business model is to align ourselves with the community and watch it grow. just to show some examples of what we're talking about. Just recently, end of December, we purchased a regional mall in the center of Miami-Dade County called Shops at Sunset Place, which was designed and closed to the community, and which we will be tearing down, I would say, more or less 70%, and opening the doors and creating a neighborhood within a neighborhood, and creating a destination out of a location. Then we have the Orlando Sentinel. Single-handedly, we're probably one of the largest landowners in downtown Orlando, where we own more or less 19 acres. We purchased, that is the current, well, it was till 6 months ago, the current campus of the Orlando Sentinel. They soon have moved out, and we are ongoing stages of planning, working with professionals. Then, the most similar to Midtown Miami, right? If you want to go to the next slide, to Tropicana, is Midtown Miami. So Midtown Miami is on 56 acres. We also purchased another 7 acres next to it. This is an old image, but I like this image because it shows you how it was just like the hole in the donut, and it has, and the success of Midtown expanded beyond Midtown now to what they call the entire Arts District, which is the Design District, Midtown, and Wynwood. If you want to go to the next slide. One thing that, it's all about putting your best foot forward. One thing that we did, and we were very successful in Midtown, and brought a lot of people to this neighborhood for the first time, and also brought the people that lived in the nearby neighborhoods to come together and meet and share, was in the beginning stages, we set up these art shows, and we did around 400,000 square feet of art show. One thing that you'll see in our numbers is, we're willing to put our money where our mouth is, and because of how we're looking to invest significant dollars into a community like St. Petersburg, because we really believe it's not just the beaches, the location. It's really, and learn this even more with the process. It's the people. Next slide. One of those, go back, you can't skip. Oh, sorry. So Watson Haynes, one of the persons that we met, that at the early stages, and anyone, that has been in the same room with the Reverend Watson Haynes for no more than 2 minutes will know exactly why he's on our team. I think we're very proud to have him as a team member, and hopefully if we can make him proud in 30 years, or he can say that he was part of this team. Next slide. I think, real estate is a very localized business, and I think we really focus in on having a good mix of local together with national people that bring the local as well as bring expertise done in similar unique projects. Here you can see different team members, but just to lead off with our next team member, Randy was the master planner. So when we started to look at this, we interviewed 16 different master planners, and we just kept going back to Randy and what he brought to the table. And you'll see now, I think our plan is an extension of who Randy is and what he brings, and I'm very proud of it. So Randy, you want to take over?
Alex, I'll be happy to take over. And greetings from the Northeast, and hello to Alan and Mayor Kreisman and the whole team there. And I too, Alan, am extremely thrilled, and like you, have been here from the beginning and went through the scenario 1 process, scenario 2 process, and now with Alex and team going through our current 3rd iteration, and we'll be happy to go through many more. And we're always asked when we do these big projects, what inspires you? How do you come up with these ideas? And in St. Pete, the answer is pretty straightforward. It's about people and places. We've met a lot of people. We've spoken to a lot of people. We talk to engaged community groups. We talk to artists and art groups. We've spoken to young people and residents. We've spoken to the business leaders. We're getting as many points of view about what their interests are and what the Trop could be. Young professionals who say things like how much they love St. Pete, how their circles intersect, and how appreciative they are of the way the city is involved in getting everyone being part of the future. We've spoken to health and wellness enthusiasts, and there are plenty, and it's sunny and warm there. Small business owners who have a particular point of view about opportunities at the Trop. And one of the groups that makes St. Pete so special are the South St. Pete neighborhoods and the Deuces residents, and those that were most affected by the demolition of the gas plant district that Mayor Kreisman alluded to and that Alan alluded to, and we'll get more into that in a second. There are as many diverse neighborhoods in this city as any other really large city, and that diversity should be reflected at the Trop. The cultural scene is just awesome, and the cultural scene at the Trop should match what the city has. The city is full of great institutions between Johns Hopkins and hospitals and art museums and universities and great schools and children and families, and all of those should have a say and a role at the Trop. You have just an incredibly amazing waterfront, and your new pier is one of the extravaganzas of all of Southeast the United States, and that will play into it. There's a great tradition of parks in St. Pete, and you're going to hear an awful lot about parks from us and the way parks will play a role in the future of the Trop. You've got Central Avenue, which is one of the only streets I know in the entire United States that's continuously active like this for over a mile. You just don't find this anywhere, and it's a couple of blocks from the Trop site, so that will influence our thinking. There's a big tradition of festivals and gathering of people and special events, and that should play a part in the Trop. There's the Pinellas Trail, which links a number of places all the way up to Bradenton, and will have a big role in our site. There's the history of St. Pete, and we hear a lot about history, and let's go back a little further. And one of the things I love about this image of St. Pete, which was an original seaside town, is just a classic composition of streets and blocks and parks. And when you look at this image, everything blended together. And you could see a central business district, and you could see neighborhoods, and you could see parks, but everything works seamlessly together. And the success of that neighborhood and that city plan grew, and eventually there were enclaves, and we're now focused particularly on the African-American enclave that was at the gas plant district that resided on this dirt. And so the history of what went on there is going to inform the way we design the future of this site. And that neighborhood turned into this, which back in those days, in the 80s and 90s, was considered progress. We all think very differently now about the way we design our cities and think about urban design. But when we talked to those residents of South St. Pete and the Deuces, we heard things from them like, I hope to buy a house where my family used to live. This is the future for my grandkids. I would like to start a business here. Job training is important to my future. Those are things that you would have heard in the original origin of what St. Pete was. And this image I love because this is really what we would love to create together, an inclusive, sustainable, and diverse community that's all about a great place to be. And how do you do that? How do you take all of these fantastic neighborhoods, and as Alex said earlier, the Trop here, like Midtown Miami, is a hole in the donut. And it's a neighborhood, it's a place looking for an identity. And like the original St. Pete plan, what you do here is you start by building parks and streets. And first job is to take Booker Creek and make it magnificent and marry it with Campbell Park and expand the influence of the creek. We're going to build a greenway, which is going to take the Trop and it's going to extend east all the way to the waterfront. It's going to diagonally crisscross the creek and come through the Trop site and extend west all the way to the Deuces and the Arts Warehouse District and 20 or 30 blocks to the south. And when our streets are put in place, it's going to be a little like mending nets, and we will knit back together the city, and there'll be a new neighborhood or 3 or 4 neighborhoods on the Trop site that will add to the inventory of all of these fantastic places. This little freehand drawing is very green, and it's to inspire you and help us imagine what it would be like to be in a neighborhood that's very walkable, with abundant open spaces. And all of those parks that we were talking about and water events and streets make that environment. And we have to start from the beginning in a world that looks like this today. And we're going to start with Booker Creek, which is like a ditch. And our plan and our thought and our imagination for Booker Creek is to greatly expand it, to actually reroute it, and to make it magnificent and have a series of great places along.
3-minute warning.
Okay, thank you. And what's cool about Booker Creek to us is that the land slopes. It's not flat like the rest of Florida. And in fact, we can control the flow of Booker Creek, and we can introduce little weirs and dams, and we can create water places along the way. And we intend to do that with our team of engineers and take Booker Creek today that looks like a drainage ditch and dare to dream about Booker Creek Park that could take on this kind of quality. Create water terraces, to create the Banyan Village, to take the Banyan Village and introduce retail, dining, and entertainment right in the middle of the creek, and to take the creek and those small islands and turn the stormwater management constraint into a beautiful environment for people to be around. And our greenway will have 8 linked parks that go from east to west, like a piazza and an incubator for entrepreneurs and artists that we're calling a stage spot. There'll be Art St. Pete at the piazza and places for art. There'll be a great central park and a grand park in the middle, and areas for kids parks, an area for dog parks, an arts park below the highway, which will be a wonderful gateway from South St. Pete. And we intend on taking the Heritage Trail that's on 9th and 22nd and extending that throughout the entire Trop site, over the freeway, and even through Campbell Park, and use that as a place to commemorate great people who've been in the district, events, places, buildings, churches. And also the coming BRT and transportation drives access and value, but for our team, it really means how do we do all that and prioritize pedestrians? And there's a big significant network and city transit initiatives that we will be part of, that we will include. And in fact, not only the way buses move and cars move, but people move, and all of the trails throughout the city make their way and come through the Trop site. All of that transit will put in place a development opportunity for a conference center and hotel, a tech campus, Grow Smarter Office Center, the Beehive, which is for small businesses and networking, micro retail for entrepreneurs and artists, a place called the Copper Market, which is pop-up retail. Most importantly, affordable housing that's integrated into neighborhoods and not standalone. And our highest of hopes would be to create a diverse, affordable neighborhood with small business opportunities that's integrated into the rest of the city. And we love this image because you see Booker Creek and the boardwalk and retail and office and residential, nature and development all as one as our sustainable vision. And we do this kind of work all the time, and it starts with a partnership between the City of St. Pete and all of the community organizations. Alex at the head of the Midtown Development. Our team has a development and economics. We have a design and engineering portion where we've worked in cities all across the country with community outreach. We've got a process where our design, 3-step design process will never stop getting community outreach from tip to stern. And at the end, why do we think our team is the best? Because we always put people first. We'll use your history as a guide for our design of your future. This is a team that's done this before all around the country. We know how to build sustainable communities, social sustainable, economically sustainable, environmentally sustainable. And last, we're committed to a true partnership between the community, the city, and the Midtown Development team.
Randy, thank you very much. And Alex, thank you very much for the presentation. I will, as I said before, we're going to stick to the 15 minutes, but I will let each team finish their concluding thoughts. So now I want to move on to Portman Holdings and Third Lake, and I want to introduce Ken Jones from Third Lake.
Okay, Alan, can you see me and hear me?
I can. We got you, Ken. We got
Okay, great. And I want to wait just a minute till we get our screen being shared properly, if that's okay.
We will not start your 15 minutes until you pull up your screen.
We'd appreciate that. I think Reed is going to share his screen here. I think maybe the other guys are still sharing their screen.
Okay,
Okay.
you're on, Ken.
Well, Alan and Mr. Mayor and everybody joining tonight, thank you for allowing us. First of all, I want to just say thank you to Midtown and Sugar Hill and Unicorp as well. I think no matter who ends up getting the nod on this RFP, St. Pete's going to be the winner. Everybody here has put a tremendous amount of time and effort into it. So I haven't met all the other developers. I know some of them, but thank everybody for the time and effort. So we're going to walk through tonight. We're going to introduce you to Portman and Third Lake, walk you through our community and our local understanding, our design vision, what we view as community engagement, how we do that, and then we're going to wrap it up and give you some final thoughts. Flip to the next slide. And I'm going to introduce Hunter Richardson now. He's going to talk a little bit about the Portman Third Lake team.
Good evening. My name is Hunter Richardson. I'm Executive Vice President of Portman Holdings. We're excited to be here. It's one that I can't say we were looking at Tampa St. Pete until Ken came to us last summer and said that this was coming up and it was something that they wanted to take a run at. We've been partners with Third Lake for roughly 3.5, 4 years now and have done a number of projects together. But we put together a development team that's Portman Holdings, and we've been around since 1957. We've done over 65 million square feet of office, hotel, retail, residential internationally. And we've done roughly $10 billion worth of development. We are partnered with Third Lake, and they've got over $3 billion in assets, and they're a developer in their own right. And more importantly to us, they're located there in Tampa St. Pete. So they are very familiar with the local environment. And then we collectively have formed Portman Residential about a year ago, and the principals of Portman Residential have done roughly 9,500 apartments or almost $3 billion worth of development. And so it gives us a unique blend of development capacities. And then we've also brought on board Echelon with Daryl Leclerc, who's the developer of the 463-acre Carillon, just on the outskirts of downtown. And Daryl brings a unique perspective based on his community activities as a board member with Johns Hopkins, All Children's, and so forth. And so gives us another sort of mix of local flavor. And then we brought on board Piper Sandler as our public financing partner to help us with the financing as we get to understand what this project's going to be. And we've taken an approach where we basically put together a 3-team design team. We brought on board HKS, who was the master planning that the city engaged back in 2016. And we use them to get familiar with the site and also bring their expertise relative to baseball stadiums, since they're an architect of baseball stadiums. We brought in 5+ Design, who's a placemaking architect out of LA, who we've worked with in the past. And then we've also brought on board Bear Blender Bell out of New York, who most recently was responsible for the battery for the Atlanta Braves in Atlanta. And we've taken a little bit different approach, which was to basically say, we'll take our shot at this based on our understanding of the marketplace in terms of what the opportunity is, put forward a plan with and without a baseball stadium. And then as we move down this process relative to working with the city, then we would engage the city relative to what it really wants and what the various communities want. We don't have full benefit of that at this juncture, and the intent is to get that as we go. But we've worked with a number of cities, not so much in Florida, but around the country and around the world. And basically, we cut our teeth in Atlanta with Peachtree Center in Atlanta. We did Embarcadero in San Francisco, Renaissance Center in Detroit. I've also worked in San Diego and Salt Lake City and Charlotte and other cities. And so we're very familiar with working with local jurisdictions and local communities. And with that, I'm going to kind of turn it back to Ken, who actually grew up in the area and has a whole lot more familiarity with the site for our team.
Thank
Ken?
you, Hunter. It's interesting when you talk about, what does the community understanding look like, both past, present, and future? For me, I grew up here, so I moved here in 1976. I remember as a child going down to St. Petersburg, which from the small town where I lived in Port Richey, Florida, that seemed like a metropolis to me as a child. And I can tell you, I remember what it was like before there was a baseball stadium. I remember walking around down there, and there were, you had so many thriving businesses. You had Black-owned businesses. You had more than 285 buildings down there on this site, which, was once thriving, and then it really did get dislocated. And it's unfortunate because I remember that debate growing up about baseball and thinking, what are we going to do with all those churches, those businesses, those communities that are there on this site? And the answer was, we're going to make a lot of promises to these folks to get them to leave the site. And then we're going to make sure we make good on those promises. The only problem with that was that the second part of that equation never happened. And I remember reading about it back then. I remember talking to people about it as a young person living in Tampa Bay. And it really is driving how we think about this development. Thinking about the displaced communities in Methodist Town, the gas plant, 22nd Street communities, all these thriving businesses were there, and they're now gone. And they never got the chance to really rebuild themselves into what they could have been. And so that, along with those 21 guiding principles, has really has given us the energy to put together a plan that I think is very robust. It's really going to reinvigorate those communities. It's going to bring them all together as a cohesive unit. And the connectivity between those different areas, South St. Pete, Campbell Park, Deuces, Historic Roser Park, the Warehouse Arts District, all these things are going to come back together in a very, very uniform and cohesive way. So we are very excited about that. It is the one thing that drives us as we think about how to redevelop this. With that said, I'm going to turn this over to our friends at HKS to talk a little bit about the planning and the opportunities to make those connections I just spoke about.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. This is Eric with HKS. We had the benefit of hearing from the community back in 2016 when we did the original master plans, and that was just step one. We still see it as step one in the community engagement process. This is going to be an ongoing effort. We need to understand the story behind the site. We understand the story about what needs to be developed. We worked on a project very similar in Minneapolis for the Minnesota Vikings Stadium, and the project was, the culture, I should say, was much different than what is in St. Pete. But through that project, we were able to discover the history behind the Norwegians moving south into the city of Minneapolis. And that 28 square block area around the stadium took on a very specific cultural significance. And it actually resulted in some of the design of the stadium. The stadium is actually designed to look like a Viking ship plowing through the streets of Minneapolis in a very promising way. And whether you like the architecture or not, it was very significant and took on a kind of a funky feel to what was kind of a gray town. So we're looking for that story. Randy touched upon it on his project, but we also feel like Booker Creek is the catalyst for redevelopment of the street grid and what you had there before Tropicana Field came along. So the image you're seeing on the screen is that connection of Booker Creek. It's the widening out and placemaking of it, making it a very viable entity, desirable to be there on a regular basis. We also want to reinvent the street grid there to bring in some of the community from South St. Petersburg, as well as from the Warehouse Arts District on the west. We believe that the reconnection there will help the community grow over time. Reed, why don't you go to the next slide for me, please? So we also looked at the city's 21 guiding principles of development. You can see the arts and culture, the infusion of health and wellness, and the sustainable initiatives So we want to make sure we infuse those, whether it's got the stadium or not. But Booker Creek provides that catalyst for us. Go ahead to the next slide, Reed. We look at the community benefit and the smart city initiatives. This is an opportunity to really put St. Petersburg on the map in terms of smart city initiatives. You guys have such a great development scheme in terms of transportation as well as new technologies. And we want to find a way to blend all that together, link together the medical community that's there in South St. Petersburg, as well as the residential and living environment that would operate around Booker Creek.
And Shelby Morris with HKS. And sustainability is more about just being green. It's more about community wellness. And some things we take a look at when we look at this is integration, how it is with the community, the ecology, and probably most importantly, discovery and change along the 21 guiding principles with the city. How do we do a smart city development? And then a lot of times with this, you have issues where you don't have access to food, jobs, education, transportation, and most importantly, parks. So with this plan, we take that into account and give that access and really try to create a multi-generational design. Next slide, Reed. And then as we're looking at the design, part of what we're doing is pulling in the culture of the place. And really one aspect of one tactic, I would say, of doing this is engaging local artists to come up and develop the history, work with us, the history of St. Pete, the history of the neighborhood, the community, to be part of the design of everything moving forward. It's more than just the artwork on the streets, it's cultural programs, it's the event spaces, it's the entertainment, and truly creating a 24/7 live, work, play environment where everybody through St. Pete and the region will come. And Harvey with Portman's going to tell you a little bit more of the program and how we implement this.
3-minute warning.
Harvey, you're still on mute.
Thanks, Shelby. The plan we've outlined represents a truly comprehensive program offering space for various end users and promoting a true 24/7 urban environment in St. Pete. While we believe the program that we've presented makes the most sense based on our current progress, one thing we know is that this will change as we receive market and community feedback. The residential product will be provided for a variety of family sizes and income levels. The office space targeting a range of users from large corporate tenants to small business enterprises. The retail both in the form of a newly created village district and on the ground floor of the large uses. Tech and research focused campuses envisioned for educational healthcare users to drive innovation in research and development activities. A 400 key hotel with 50,000 square feet of meeting space, significant park and recreational space, approximately a 30,000 seat ballpark should the Tampa Bay's Rays decide to stay. In the non-ballpark option, creative arts and manufacturing district as a continuation of the existing warehouse and arts district. Housing, though, will be a major component of our plan with around 3,500 to 4,000 homes, depending on whether the Rays stay. While we're in the early process, great design is a critical part of our firm's history and will be a critical part of the master plan. The plan is to have a diversity of housing types from low rise, mid rise to high rise. The diversity of product will allow a diversity of incomes, which will create a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive community. The housing, again, will be available for all family types and sizes. Affordable housing will be a major component of and emphasis of our plan, with as much affordable housing as possible, but we think of this more as mixed income. The affordable elements will be woven seamlessly through the master plan and indistinguishable from all the housing types. The development and each building will be intentionally planned for a wide mix of incomes, which is typical for most Portman communities. The phasing this is another thing that we know will change, but our current plan is around a 10+ year build out between 5 distinctive phases, starting from the northeast and connecting to the street grid above and working our way southwest. And then I'll hand things back over to Ken to talk about further community engagement.
You're on mute, Ken.
Muted, Ken.
Sorry about that. Alan, I was just saying with about the minute that we've got left, I wanted to make sure that we re-emphasized, our community engagement. So, we've met with more than 24 community leaders, both in the African-American community and all over St. Petersburg over the last several years. It hasn't just been for us a Johnny come lately type of a thing. And so we've spent the time to really sit down with leaders and make sure that we do understand what they're thinking on this development, because in our view, everybody that has a voice that wants to be heard on this project should have the ability to have that voice heard and have it taken into consideration. And it really manifests itself in all these different areas. It's small business, it's innovation, it's jobs, the arts, education, environmental, all these different facets of this development. And the final point I'll make is that, like I said, we've been here for a very long time. We do have the capacity to have long-term staying power. Our group is very, very financially capable. We've got good bandwidth and good wherewithal. We view this as a multi-decade project where we're going to be able to start today in 2021 and see it through all the way, regardless of how long that takes. So thank you again for the time this evening. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to continuing the dialogue.
Okay, Brian, are we up?
Alan, you're on mute.
Oh, wow. I'm not sure how that happened. Sorry about that, guys. Ken, thank you very much. Thank you to your team for your presentation. I will now turn it over to Sugar Hill Community Partners and David Carlock to talk about their proposal.
Thanks, Alan. Brian, can you get us started here? Terrific, thank you. Thanks for the introduction, Alan. And thank you to the Mayor, Council, and other city leaders for having such an inspirational vision of what the Trop can become. And good evening to everybody who's joining us tonight. My name is David Carlock. I'm the project manager for Sugar Hill Community Partners team. We're delighted to be here today and look forward to sharing our proposal with you. Before we jump in, I want to pause for a moment. We're going to spend a lot of our time today talking about the future of the Trop. But we believe strongly, as I know others do, that its future must acknowledge its past. Next slide, please. Brian. So we think Quincy has it right. African-American laborers who worked on the Orange Belt, the railroad that put St. Petersburg on the map, and which today is marked by the Pinellas Trail, began to settle here in the late 1880s. From that small start, St. Petersburg's African-American community grew. Peppertown, Methodist Town, 22nd Street South, Gas Plant, Sugar Hill neighborhoods, which inspired our team name, fostered a proud and vibrant culture. The past must be remembered and honored. Keeping with this idea, we've met with dozens of local community leaders, businessmen and women, and educators over the past several months. In fact, one of our team members is presenting to the Campbell Park Neighborhood Association right now. In any case, I want to thank everyone for being so generous with their time and insights. We'd like to spend our 15 minutes or so on 3 subjects. The first is a brief introduction to our team. The second is an overview of our design vision. And the third is really just to highlight a few key points of our community benefits plan. Next slide, please. So here we are. It's a little Brady Bunch that was inspirational for us, but we think it works okay. We've assembled a talented and diverse team we believe represents the best of global and local expertise. We've highlighted local members of our team with orange bars at the bottom of their images. We don't have time to introduce everybody this evening, so we selected just a few to spotlight to give you a sense of who we are. Next slide, please. JMA Ventures is our lead developer. JM has extensive experience with complex mixed-use projects, including Sacramento's Downtown Commons, which is anchored by Golden One Center, home of the NBA Sacramento Kings. It's widely viewed as one of the best examples of stadium-anchored mixed use in the country. Next slide, please. Next up is Moody Nolan. Moody Nolan is the largest African-American owned architectural firm in the country and the recipient of the 2021 AIA Architectural Firm of the Year Award. We're very honored to have them as part of the Sugar Hill team. Next slide, please. Affordable and workforce housing is a core part of our proposal. Blue Sky Communities has a long track record in the St. Pete market. On the Trop, Sean and Scott, Blue Sky's president and CFO, have partnered with two South St. Pete community leaders, Roy Binger and the Reverend Louis Murphy. Next, please. And we're also very happy to have local architect Bahar Petronex on the team. They're active across the city with a portfolio that includes the Holocaust Museum, several high-rises, and community-driven projects like the factory. Sarah Jane, who wrote her thesis on the history of the Trop site, has played a key role in helping us understand the historical context of the project. Next slide, please. We understand that tackling a development of this magnitude requires real experience. Our team has collectively overseen $10 billion worth of development, including $700 million in St. Pete. Next slide, please. We also, and we think critically, have a lot of experience with pro sports venues. That includes Chase Center in San Francisco, the new MLS Stadium in Cincinnati, and Citi Field, home of Major League Baseball's New York Mets. So we understand how to be a good partner of the Rays, and we'll be very excited to work with them. Next slide, please. And as I indicated earlier, members of our team are leaders in affordable and workforce housing. Since 2010, we've delivered over 1,700 affordable and workforce housing units in Tampa, St. Pete, with another 1,150 in the pipeline. Next slide, please. Okay, moving on to our design vision. I'll turn the floor over to Michael Sorensen with Henning Larsen, one of the world's leading master planning firms.
Thank you, David, and good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Sorensen. I'm a design director for Henning Larsen, and I've been working with our Sugar Hill team to design a transformational vision for Tropicana Fields. Over the past months, we've talked with you and we've talked with our neighbors. We've spent time on site and around St. Pete. We have learned about your history, your climate, and your ambitions for what this site can mean for St. Pete's future. It's been an incredibly inspiring design process, and we're thrilled to have a chance to share that with you today. Our hope is to bring lasting positive impact to St. Pete for you, your children, and your grandchildren. Next, please. Our team has worked in cities around the world, and when you think about the qualities and spaces that make a great city, a lot of common traits are shared. Cities, when they are best, are designed for people. They are inviting, they are lively, they are walkable and connected, they have plenty of public and green spaces, and they are home to opportunity, creativity, and community. Next, please. What's been so inspiring about this project is that all of these qualities already exist in St. Pete today. The activities on the pier, the cafes, the restaurants around the city, the arts and cultural scene, the historic architecture, Pinellas Trail, Booker Creek. St. Pete is already an incredibly vibrant city. And our proposal is about bringing the best of St. Pete to the Tropicana site and making it accessible, affordable, and inviting to everyone. Next, please. Our design vision is driven by 4 themes: reconnecting, rebuilding, and remembering, connecting through nature, extending the human scale downtown, and creating landmark civic stages. These 4 themes are not only visionary goals for the project, but they're also physical elements that structure the design of the site and build new connections between people. Next, please. Firstly, our proposal starts by reconnecting the site to the surrounding communities and celebrating the history, culture, and experiences that made this site a thriving neighborhood years ago. A history walk filled with memorials and historic markers defines the main pedestrian path that cuts diagonally through the site. This serves as the key connection back to downtown, the Warehouse Arts District, Juices Live, Campbell Park, and Melrose. Here you can see an image of what the history walk starts to feel and look like. It's human scaled, it's active, it's inviting, and it's vibrant. Next, please. Nature already has a strong presence and identity in St. Pete. This project is an opportunity to continue that legacy. We start by reimagining Booker Creek as a place of connection to nature and to each other. Booker Creek becomes a key north-south axis that reaches over the highway and via a land bridge invites Campbell Park to connect back into the site. By taking down the retaining walls and reintroducing landscape, this design creates a new green destination in the city. It's a resilient landscape that adapts to the changing waters in the event of flooding and supports the diverse ecology of the creek. Next, please. We are proposing a diverse mix of programming on site to bring jobs, homes, and activities to St. Pete. An innovation campus along Booker Creek will build on St. Pete's already strong legacy as a hub for innovation, inviting more jobs and giving companies more room to grow. A 1.3 million square foot convention center and hotel has the potential to become a regional and national destination. A robust housing scheme will make sure the neighborhood is accessible and affordable for everyone. And we also look forward for the possibility of reimagining the Rays' new stadium as an important link between the site and the city. All of these buildings and the urban spaces will be designed with a human scale at heart, fostering vibrant and livable communities. Next, please. Anchored at either end of the History Walk are two landmark civic spaces. At the west end, the grand stair and shaded plaza of the Convention Center offer a stage for public life. It's perfect for gatherings, events, markets, small concerts, and more. A plaza at the other end of the History Walk connects the site to downtown and becomes an anchor for the future stadium. Next, please. So although our proposal offers two schemes, one with a future stadium and one without, they are both rooted in history and driven by the same vision. That vision is to create a connected, sustainable, and livable community in the heart of St. Petersburg. I'll pass it back to David to walk through some of the details of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I want to spend the time we have left talking about our approach to community engagement and community benefits. Community engagement is too often viewed as something that happens only at the start of a project, a tax essentially to be paid by the developer. That's not our view. This isn't something that we have to do. It's something we get to do. I talked earlier about the dozens of conversations we've already had with community members. That's just the beginning. We're committed to engaging the community throughout the life of this project. With respect to community benefits, we have a multi-part plan that we outline in our RFP response. I'd love to discuss each in detail today, but given the time constraint, we're going to focus on just a few. Next slide, please. Let's start with workforce development, better known as job creation, which is what really matters. I want to emphasize that our approach covers each phase of the project: design, construction, operation. Today, I want to focus on construction. 30,000 jobs is a big number, but it's not anything that separates us from the other teams. A project of this magnitude should create that many jobs. The key, and this is where I think we are a little bit differentiated, is understanding what it takes to make sure the South St. Pete residents receive the maximum possible benefit of those jobs. We're actively working with St. Petersburg College, St. Pete Works, ABC Gulf Coast, and Pinellas Tech to develop a workforce development program that will ensure residents are aware of the opportunities and are fully trained to successfully take advantage of them. Next slide, please. For our next two pieces, I want to introduce Ernie Dubose, CEO and founder of Ducon Construction. Ducon and Suffolk have partnered to lead our pre-construction efforts. Ernie?
Thank you, David. I'm excited to spend a couple minutes on our small woman and minority-owned business enterprise inclusion plan and our affordable housing program. Any good inclusion program will have an effective outreach component where SWMBEs, or small woman and minority-owned business enterprises, are aware of the opportunities and prepared to be partnered. The key element, though, is setting those companies up for success, and we speak from personal experience. Ducon has benefited as a construction management firm by growing through mentorships with large national construction managers. Currently, we're doing over $300 million of work in the Bay Area with these national firms, presenting millions of dollars of similar mentor-protege opportunities to minority and small subcontractors and suppliers. Creating similar mentor-protege opportunities is at the heart of our approach of this project, not just from a construction aspect, but also architecture, engineering, and development. We call it our mentor to mainstream.
3-minute warning.
Helping smaller businesses get exposure, experience, and relationships they need to level up as a business partner is very important to us. Our program has provided market-leading results. In the past 12 months, over 20% of all DUCON work has been contracted to local WMBEs, and 20 million specifically has been awarded to minority business enterprises. We look forward to setting the bar even higher on the Trop. Let's shift to affordable and workforce housing. We've already shared with—
Can we get the next slide? Can we get the next slide, Brian?
Please.
Thank you.
We've already shared with you our local partner of this effort, Blue Sky, and now we want to highlight 3 specific points in our plan. 1, at least 35% of residential units will be set at 30% to 80% average median income. Just for reference, 80% translates to an annual household income of $25,000 to $50,000. Number 2, a minimum of an additional 10 to 15% of residential units will be workforce housing, which will be affordable at an annual household income of approximately $75,000. And third and finally, we will also develop 100 affordable condo homes for sale. Peterborough Apartments, a recent Blue Sky project across from the Sunshine Center, is consistent with the quality of construction and ongoing management you can expect from Sugar Hill on the Trop. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Ernie. Appreciate that. Next slide, please. As I indicated before, earlier in the presentation, we're committed to community dialogue. As part of that, I want to announce what we call Developer Hours. A senior member of the Sugar Hill team will be available via Zoom every Thursday afternoon from 2 to 4 p.m. Members of the community can pop in anytime during that window to ask questions and learn more about our vision for the Trop. I will say that we would normally do this in person. Given that we're not completely out of the woods on the pandemic, we're going to do it virtually. We would shift at some point to in person. To sign up, please visit our website, www.sugarhillcommunitypartners.com. And of course, we'll be live at the community meetings later this week. I'll close with our promise. Oh, next slide, I'm sorry. Next slide, please. I'll close with our promise to the residents of St. Petersburg. We'll be reliable partners to the city and community, and we'll work to ensure that the project becomes a reflection of St. Petersburg's history, a vision of its future, and fulfillment of its promise as an engine of opportunity, creativity, and inspiration for all residents. I hope we've been able to communicate how passionate we are about the Trop, and that in the spirit of Quincy Jones, we'll make sure the project is connected to where it's been so we can get to where we need to go. Thank you very much.
David, thank you very much. And thank you to your team for your presentation tonight. So we have heard from 3 of the developers. We will hear from the last developer in tonight's program, Unicorp National Development. After we hear from Unicorp, then we will open it up for questions and answers, which is extremely important. Those questions will come from the community, and we will articulate those questions to all of the development teams as the next phase. But let me introduce Chuck Whittle from Unicorp.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Mayor and staff and the entire community. We're honored to be part of this process. I'm here with LaShante Keys tonight, and the 2 of us are going to have a conversation and talk to you about our vision. I was lucky enough to connect with LaShante, and it's a very exciting development opportunity. We've put together a wonderful team. We've got a lot of locals. Ziskovich is our architect. He actually did Midtown Miami for the architecture. And everybody we have is local. I personally was born and raised in Central Florida. Lived here all my life. I was the son of a fireman, and I built my company up from nothing to a multi-billion-dollar development company. So I want you to know with Unicorp, what you get is you get me and you get my team. So I will be on site. I will be part of the development in every development we've done. We've done Baldwin Park, which was a redevelopment in Central Florida, Altamont Town Center, West Broad Village, a lot of really big developments. We are involved in everything from picking out the garbage cans to the flowers, to the architecture, to the parks. And we're excited about Petersburg Park because it really gives us an opportunity to form a community. And I know I told our team in the beginning, don't look at this as a development, look at it as rebuilding a community. And so as we talk about it, and my presentation is a little bit different than the other ones you've seen because we're going to really just talk about what we'd like to do and what we think we can bring to the community and how we can collaborate with the community to come up with something very special. We're pretty passionate about what we've got in front of us here. These opportunities come around once in a lifetime if you're lucky. And this is a great opportunity to look to the future and really heal the community. And LaShonte, why don't you talk about why you wanted to connect with us and how you became part of the team?
All right, most definitely. Good evening, everyone. My name is LaShonte Keys. And just a little background of me. I'm a graduate of Florida A&M University out of Tallahassee. And for me, I remember my city walking through the CAF, and I remember seeing my city on the screen being burnt down due to the riots back in '96, I think it was. And I recalled saying, I'm never coming back to that city again. But then there was this little old lady. I don't know who she is, don't know where she came from, but at that moment, she stopped me and said, what are you doing to change it? What are you really doing to make a difference? And it still didn't dawn on me what that even meant until 3 years later when I came back to the city of St. Petersburg back in 2000 and really started putting my foot into the community and working with African-American youth and working with just community leaders and trying to make St. Petersburg a better place. And so when I was approached through inclusivity, and if you don't know what inclusivity really focuses on cultural competence for organizations. And inclusivity approached me about being the community outreach specialist as a contractor. And that's what I really worked with them because they knew what I was doing in the community, not only for youth, but also through health engagements as well. And so when he brought Unicorps to the table, they just had a vision. They had a true vision that really brought the community together and just really tried and will, not just try, but we'll make sure that we honor the past, but also honor the future that we have in front of us right now. One of the things that we really want to look at as far as community engagement is we really want to talk to individuals that have left this area. St. Petersburg has produced a ton of talent, but a ton of talent has not come back to St. Petersburg for some reason. And so we want to make sure that this Peters Park gives them an opportunity to come back. But we also want to talk to those high schoolers who are in high school right now as community engagement as well. We want to bring them to the table because by the time this is built, we want to make sure they come back. We want to make sure they get their education wherever they want to go to, our state, local, but we also want to make sure they come back as well. And so to talk more about the vision, I think I'm gonna pass it back over to you, Chuck, again, to talk more about the vision.
When we look at the 21 principles, we really look at it as how are we going to create opportunities? And, from what LaShonte just said about, the lady who approached him and said, what are you going to do? What we have is the opportunity to really, I started with the park. I thought, how do you bring communities together? Communities come together through parks. All the great cities in our nation have these great parks. And what the park will do is it will not only benefit the 86 acres where the stadium currently sits, it's going to benefit the entire community. It's going to create a halo effect. It's where kids are going to go play on the weekends. It's where you're going to play kickball. It's where you're going to, we have a roller skating rink in the middle of the park. Up north, they've got ice skating rinks. And I remember when I was a kid, we roller skated a lot. And I thought, these are things that we can create to bring everybody together. They don't look at color, they look at people. And our whole design philosophy with this entire development is exactly that. Like, for instance, we have workforce housing, we have affordable housing, we have luxury housing, but we don't want it to be distinguished as that. We want it all to mix in together because we don't want to create different districts. I've seen some of the proposals creates a district for this and a district for that. What we're trying to do is create a community where everybody is together, everybody participates together in the community. And I think we've achieved that. We've got office here, we've got hotels here, we've got housing here, we've got plenty of retail. We've just built tons and tons of retail. But the difference in what we have is, I think it's just all mixed in a very pleasant way together. We've even got a letter of intent from Marriott, which I don't think anybody else has brought to the table. We've done a few deals with Marriott hotels, and they want to be here and bring a convention here. The one thing our plan offers is 37 acres of park space. And what we're trying to do is make sure we have a balance. I know from reading all the city materials, there was a lot of density in it, and we didn't quite get to that level of density. But what we tried to do is create a balance of what would the community want. And we think the community would want what you see right in the middle of this is a great place to gather that will benefit houses 2 blocks away, 4 blocks away, 6 blocks away. It's a place for everybody to come together. It's interconnected with all the neighborhoods, with pedestrian bridges and streets. So it will truly flow everybody together. Sure, our plan allows for more density. We can put more density if that's at the end of the day what the community wants and the city wants, or we can have less density if that's what the neighborhoods want. But what we do have is we have a plan that we're willing to collaborate with the community on. And once again, what you're going to get with me is you're going to get a guy who's going to be in those meetings, who's going to talk, because this vision that we've come up with right now, I don't think it's the perfect vision. I think it's a great vision. I think the perfect vision comes through collaboration with the community, collaboration with the staff. Everybody's talked about experience. We've all built lots of different developments. You know, the difference with us is we're not internal rate of return driven. We're driven by trying to create a great place. And I've said all along to my team that when I go in to do a development like this, to build a community like this, I want to be able to complete this and have the community say, well done. This is what we wanted. Because if what we're bringing to the table is not what the community wants, frankly, we just don't want to do it. We want something that the community is all together saying, wow, this is what we wanted, and it'll be a legacy. This is a chance to build something that will be an example of great development throughout our nation and opportunities that will come down the years. So we're excited to be part of this. We're excited for what we can do. We're excited for what we will do if you give us the permission to develop it. Lashante, why don't you go ahead?
Most definitely. And I think the great thing about collaborating with Unicorp is that also too, they're willing to be held accountable. So we are definitely, in inclusivity, we're holding them accountable to make sure that my grandparents, who I was raised by, get what they were promised. You know, a lot of us have grandparents who have passed on that are not even able to see the promises come to fruition, and it was already gone. And so we're holding Unicorp accountable, but we need community voices to assist us in holding them accountable. It just can't be myself using that voice. And if you know me, you know I pull from all different aspects of life to come to the table. And so we're going to need voices that represent the young population. We're going to need voices that represent the LGBTQ population. We need voices that represent the older population. We need all those voices at the table because, as Chuck said, we want to make sure that Peters Park is what it is. Peters Park, a place where everybody come together. And so also too, I want to stop seeing people go from St. Pete to Tampa to find culture, to find good times, to find relaxing. Again, if you know, we are not from Tampa. We are not Pinellas County. We are St. Pete. We are St. Petersburg. And to some, we are the Burg. And so we want to make sure that this project represents everybody's voices at the table. And so also too, I think we'll also be looking closely at the CBA and how we can collaborate some of the things that the CBA is being offered to the table as well. So those are some things that we'll be looking at too.
Yeah, Lashante brings up a good point. You know, I do realize as a developer, the buck stops here. And I'll say this to the city, when you need someone to call on the phone, I answer my phone. I am the guy. There's not going to be somebody appointed from our company who's going to be there on the project every day. It's going to be, our team is going to be there, but I'm personally involved in every single detail. That's what you're getting with us. And you'll see on every development we've ever done, that's what you get. I am so involved in these things, and I think it separates us a little bit from our competition here, is I'm involved with the businesses. I review their business plans. I mean, one big important part of this is creating and nurturing businesses within. And we do this all the time. I've got hundreds and hundreds of different tenants, and I sit with each one of them and we review their business plan. And if it doesn't work, we help them through that business plan on how it will work. We help them develop a plan. We've even offered in our development proposal that we will give discounted rent and free rent for periods of time to help start up businesses, because we know that's what the community needs. It needs to be able to grow within. Some of the best places you ever go to eat at are local businesses. Everybody is, I mean, I'm not saying anything bad about chains. We've got a lot of chain restaurants that rent space from us, but the best meals you get are the local ones that are done by mom and pops. And this is a great opportunity to bring along many mom and pop businesses to grow into new businesses. Our construction is all going to be hiring within local. We've already got local contractors who are working for us, Cast Construction, Moss Construction, Power Design. Power Design is a huge local employer in the St. Petersburg community. There are electricians already working for us in Orlando. They're working in Sarasota. They're working on different development deals that we have. So we are bringing a team from within the community. All of our consultants are from within the community. And all of us have a passion and desire to promote from within the community, to have local job fairs, to hire local people. And then when we open the businesses, to hire locals, to train those locals into assistant managers and managers and business owners. And that's what you're going to get with us. I'm an entrepreneur who started my business when I was 12 years old from nothing, and trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. And I ended up building a decent sized company. And so, I've heard the others talk tonight about, investors and this and that. We don't have investors. It's us. It's our company. We're a $5 billion firm. We've done business all throughout Central Florida.
3-minute warning.
I'm sorry, 3 minutes. We have an unblemished history, and we stand behind our deals with lots of integrity, and we deliver what we say we are. So, we're very, very excited. I think you can see we've got a very talented team. Like I said, my architect is the guy who did do Midtown in Miami, Bernard Ziskovich. They do all of our projects, and we're very excited to have them on board. The housing is going to be integrated where you will not tell if your neighbor is making $25,000 a year, if your neighbor is making $150,000 a year. We are going to develop a community that is a community for all. It's the place where you're going to be on the weekends playing with your dog, or ice or roller skating in the park, or playing putt-putt. We even got an aviary in the park with live birds. So we think we can create the hub of St. Petersburg that will make St. Petersburg blossom into even more of a beautiful city than it is today, because we'll replace that giant parking lot with a park and with a community gathering space that will build the future that St. Petersburg deserves to have. And so we're happy to be here, and we know we can deliver on a vision that we will collaborate with the community and bring the community together. So thank you for your time.
Thank you all.
Chuck, thank you very much. LaShante, thank you very much. Appreciate you guys giving your presentation tonight to the folks that are listening. And in that respect to all the developers, again, I want to thank you, as I think the mayor indicated early on, or somebody did, that y'all put in a lot of work in this. The city recognizes that. That is why the mayor selected you to be in the short list. Because of the ideas and thoughts and teams that you're bringing forward. So thank you for being committed to St. Petersburg in that respect. So now let me switch gears a little bit. I'm going to go into the question and answer period of time. We have got an hour. I'm going to turn it over to Brian Caper, who has been, along with our team, has been organizing the questions that have been coming in from the audience. These are all questions from the audience. They're not coming from the city. They're coming from the people who are attending this virtual meeting. Some of the questions might be to all four of you. Some of the questions might be an individual question about your specific proposal. So it will vary, and Brian will tell you whether it's to all of you or to just one of you, or it could be a couple. The other thing that I just want to mention is we've got two additional public meetings coming up Wednesday and Thursday of this week at the Coliseum. Those will be live meetings. It will be structured very similarly. We will change the order of the presentations so that we don't want anybody to feel like, well, they're always going first or always going last. We'll shuffle the deck for each one of those meetings going forward. So Brian, let me turn it over to you for the Q&A.
Great, thank you, Alan. And again, thank you very much to our four teams for their presentations. Q&A session, I will ask a question if it's directed to everyone. Every team will have a chance to respond if it's specific to one team's proposal, and we'll just direct it to that team. You'll have 3 minutes to respond, at which point our timekeeper will kind of chime in and let you know that time is up. At that point, please finish your thought, but we'll move on to the next team. And for everyone else in the audience, please continue to submit your questions via the Q&A function. We'll continue to read those and get them entered in to get them out to the teams. So the first question is for all 4 teams, and I'm going to start with Portman and Third Lake. Can you talk about kind of your definition of what is affordable in terms of affordable housing, affordable retail space, affordable business space? How does your team ensure that affordability is a focus, and what is your solution to integrate it into your proposal?
I can take that. I assume everybody can hear me, but this is Harvey Wadsworth with Portman Residential. Look, affordable housing is a huge problem in this country, not just St. Pete, but everywhere we go. But like I mentioned in our presentation, we think of affordable housing as more mixed income, and it's exactly that. It's a mixture of income, and not just the entire development, but in every building we build. And so a portion of the units will be restricted to 60% of AMI. A portion of the units will be restricted to 80% of AMI. A portion of the units will be restricted to 120% of AMI. That's intended to have a broad mix of incomes within the entire development and an entire community. I can also speak to the retail piece, and then I'll let one of our team members talk to the commercial or the office piece. But on the retail side, we really want local operators. We really try to shy away from national tenants and national brands. We think local operators really create the place, connect us more to the community. And in order to do that, typically we have to lease our retail spaces at below market rents because the local operators can't pay top of market rents. And that's just a conscious decision that we make in order to create more of a place and that's desirable, that's connected to the community, and a place that people want to come and spend time. But that's it on the residential and retail. And if someone else on our team would like to chime in on the commercial side.
Yes, so I think on the office side, and I think that was part of the question was, what does affordable office space look like? And, as a developer in the Tampa Bay market and also all over the country, there are Class A buildings, and then there are Class A minus and Class B buildings. And right now, we are in the process of developing additional square footage in downtown St. Pete. As a matter of fact, we're working with the city right now to construct a new municipal services building. We're in the process of going through that. And the goal really is to get good blocks of space that young, up and coming entrepreneurs can actually afford. These $40, $50 rent numbers in some of these CBD markets are really tough to swallow. And so for us, it's thinking about, how do we reach out to the broadest number of businesses and people in the community so that if you have a startup, if you have a business that's early stage, you have that ability to get in there and get quality office space in a good location that's got accessible parking, it's got accessible transportation. And so we think about that because we've built office space in downtowns all over the United States, and having good, affordable, quality space is incredibly important for the fabric and the culture of a downtown community. So for us, it's top of mind along with affordable and workforce housing.
Great, thank you very much. Sugar Hill, JMA, same question. What is your approach to affordability in pretty much all forms? And how will you integrate that into your development?
Great, thanks, Brian. I'll take a first shot at this one. So on housing, I don't want to repeat what Ernie shared with us during the presentation. At a high level, we're proposing a 35% of total residential units, which is basically 35% of either about 2,000 or 3,000 residential units, depending on whether the ballpark is included or excluded in that specific plan, are below 80% AMI. We'll have 30%, 60%, and 80% tiers. The workforce, you mentioned, that's another 10% of that 2,000 to 3,000. We're also, and we mentioned this in our response, committing to an artist loft program in our affordable housing. We're very familiar with how vibrant the arts community is there. We want to make sure that artists have a place that they can at least live or perhaps even live work in those venues. I would also say that we have a hyper-local development partner. So Blue Sky has been active in Tampa, St. Pete on affordable for years. And that means they know the market, they know the local nonprofits, they understand how to put these deals together, and they understand how to create integrated community housing, right? I think everybody is sort of touching this point. We obviously believe in that as well. On retail, we propose creating a fund. We would set up a sort of a third-party advisory group with local community leaders that would decide how it gets treated, but essentially to make grants to local retailers and merchants who are interested in coming into the project. We'd also be creative with them on lease structure. So perhaps just a percentage rent structure instead of a minimum fixed payment. On office, that's interesting. I think the best answer I can give you there at this point is that we would be targeted with respect to certain opportunities that we think can make a lot of sense. So we've had a really good conversation with Alex Harris, who runs a group called Arts Conservatory for Teens in town. Super impressive guy, really inspirational organization. He's potentially looking for a new home. And a lot of the technical training they do requires a certain kind of space, double height space, because they're training lighting technicians and theatrical engineers and so forth. And so that would be the kind of opportunity that we treat as a maybe not a one-off, maybe it's a 5-off, right? But we look for those kinds of organizations to bring in on a subsidized or discounted basis to make them part of the project. Another thing I want to quickly mention is our commitment to urban farming. We like this for all kinds of reasons. How are we doing on time? We like urban farming for all kinds of reasons. One of them is that these neighborhoods historically were known for neighborhood gardens and fruit trees. It was part of how the community nourished itself. We're going to bring that back here. We've already talked with some local community groups who would be potential partners, help us manage this. And we would institute a farmers market where if I'm from the South St. Pete CRA, or if I'm in subsidized housing, community housing, I would have an opportunity to buy from the farmers market at a subsidized price. It's also a way to create jobs for young folks and give them technical training.
Thank you very much. Unicorp, same question.
So here, let me tell you a little story. So we've had COVID, right, for the last year. And what did our company do during COVID? Most of our tenants, we didn't charge them rent. We did not evict one single tenant. We worked with all of our tenants so they could build their businesses back. It really, affordability comes down on a case-by-case basis. Of course, we're going to build about a third of our residential units as affordable housing. But heck, we all know affordable isn't affordable in today's world. So how do we make it affordable? We don't squeeze every nickel of profit out of the project. We build it to a design that is affordable to build. We work on subsidies. We work on a collaboration with the city on tax incentives so we don't have to charge as much. Of course, there's formulas of AMI, which most of the public doesn't know what AMI is, because they don't deal with those financing structures. What it really comes down to is that we designate a portion of the residential units, which we have about a third of those, that we can get down to what would be a reasonable amount of money that someone can afford to have their rent be. Everybody knows that St. Petersburg housing is expensive right now. They're 14, 16, 18, $2,000 a month, and the local community can't afford that. Some of the local community can with really good jobs. And we think when we do this development, we're going to promote within the community, and they're going to grow and grow and grow and go to the different levels of housing that we're going to have, luxury and medium. But we do need to have units that are starting off in the $600, $500, $700, $800 range, subsidized, where everybody can take part of this community. So it does not become for the upper income. And so we're going to work on subsidies to do that. We're going to work on doing great design. We're going to keep our profit lower so we can afford to get people into these residential units. And we're going to work on every angle we can to make it where it's affordable to build. Also on the retail. We've got a startup program in our retail to give 3 months of free rent. So someone can get in there and start a business and not have the burden of rent in the very beginning. It's much cheaper for us to borrow our interest at a lower interest rate on interest only for a period of time. And we'll go to our lenders and say, we need a year or 2 years of interest only so we can afford to give back so people can have startup businesses. A lot of these startup businesses we see all the time, they come to us and they have $5,000, $2,000, $10,000, $15,000. They don't have a lot of money in the bank, but they got a big dream. And so we help them execute on that by providing them tenant improvement allowance and free rent and time to get their businesses started up so they can make a successful business. So we will work with people one-on-one, every single tenant who rents space from me, nail salons, pool cleaning companies, sub shops, every single one of them we get to know individually and work with them on their business plan. And so that's what we'll do here. And we will make it affordable, and we will make it for the community in a whole, not just for a select amount.
Thank you very much. Finally, Midtown, your approach to affordability.
So we define affordable, and this, the general rule of thumb is residents shouldn't spend more than a third of their monthly income on rent and utilities. So that applies to whether you earn $35,000 a year or $55,000. We would scale the rents appropriately. Our team is committed to including between 1,200 and 1,600 attainable housing units. Those are both for affordable and workforce housing units. You know, our team has built more than 12,000 affordable units across the Southeast. We're the largest Florida-based attainable housing developer. This is what we do. And you know, really what we'll be doing is implementing the vision that is created and defined by Reverend Haynes and the Pinellas County Urban League in connection with the community and listening to what you all need. And that's how we will define more specifically the income ranges that will serve on the residential side.
Great. Would you like to address the affordability on office and retail as well?
I can leave that for Alex if he's on. But we also have done ground floor retail and commercial in our affordable developments where, you know, not charging market rate rent in order to try to stimulate the, you know, the local operators. And that's something we have some experience with here in Florida as well.
To us, it's very important what happens at the ground floor. And, you know, local, cool, unique comes at a cost to the developer. It's how to create the right mix of retail tenants and office users. Give a reason, someone that lives next to Water Street, Tampa, give them a reason to come to St. Pete. And putting Starbucks and Publix isn't enough. You know, it's the unique aspect, and how we do go about doing it and making it affordable is, you know, is building out space, making it ready to move in. So a chef that wants, a local chef that wants to open a restaurant, rather than him having to build out a space, invest, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, we'll team up together with, you know, pick together with the Urban League, the right partners, the right local partners that hire the right people to create something that's unique and for they'll be ready to move in.
Great, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next question, and we'll start. It is another question for all four teams. We'll start with Sugar Hill. Can you talk about the public funding that would be required for your proposal? How much are you really looking at, and what are you looking at from a public participation in the development of your proposal?
Yeah, so right now what we're focused on are two pieces. We know there's $75 million of CRA funding that's available. We've incorporated that into our budgeting for the horizontal development. And the other piece would be for the convention center, which, as you probably know, if we were in Europe or Asia, those are operated as for-profit businesses. In this country, they're essentially developed with public funds and you know, operated for the economic benefit they deliver to the rest of the community. I think there will be other pieces that come along as we unpack the project and get smarter that may be candidates for additional funding. We know there's a TIF in place. We want to use that to the benefit of the project, and obviously that would be agreed to and figured out in collaboration with the city and our other public partners.
Great, thank you very much. Unicorp, same question.
Hi, yeah, so our program has $100 million of tax incremental financing. Just so everybody knows what that is we would take the future value of taxes created through the redevelopment of the project and float bonds and use that money to build new infrastructure. We would use that not for development of the convention center. We'll do that with private funds, as there's going to be income associated with that. the public funds that we would use would not come from the general public, which they should understand that. It's not going to come from the local taxpayers. It would come from the development that we create there and the lift in value of that development. So it would not be a burden on the local community, but yet the local community would benefit because we would develop the park with the public funding. We would develop the pedestrian bridge. We would develop the thoroughfares, extend the water and sewer, and the necessary other infrastructure needed to create the capacity for this. But the entire public would benefit for it. And that's all we seek on this. Even in the redevelopment of a stadium, we are not seeking public funds because once again, those come from taxpayers.
Thank you, Chuck. Midtown, same question.
For us, it's very simple. 75, we're looking for $75 million that the city has already in place and not a dollar more. In addition to that, we're offering to pay the city $60 million. And as part of that, the moment we're awarded, we're willing to give $10 million that the city can distribute how they start working on programs on the site, but most importantly, off the site.
Great, thank you, Alex. And Portman Third Lake, your approach to public funding.
So on the public funding side, I think there will be some CRA dollars and TIF dollars that are going to be appropriated to this project. You know, in all candor, it's a difficult question to answer today because the structure of how this development is going to unfold has not been fully completed by the city yet. So I think it really depends on what the city is willing to do with the land. Is it going to be a sale process? Is it going to be carved up over time and then parceled off into different developments as a one-off? Each development might be a one-off project. I think there are a lot of different ways that you can do this, but obviously TIF money, CRA money is part of the equation. You know, that's why we've brought on Piper Sandler, which is, you know, the number 2 or 3 public financing arm in the country. They've done more than $20 billion in development across the US and some projects exactly like this. And so I think before I give a set in concrete answer, it's really going to have to see how this plays out with what the city ultimately wants to program onto the site that will determine how much contribution from the public there is. I think the other part to this answer too is on the sports stadium, is on the ballpark. You know, part of that, again, it really depends on where the Rays come into the picture to decide if they want to have the ballpark here in St. Pete or if the split season is going to work between here and some other city. So I think, unfortunately, there's no concrete answer that's going to be set in stone permanently today. I think this is going to have to be an evolving conversation. But in my view, you know, the less of the taxpayer money that you can use, the better off you are. You know, the taxpayers shouldn't have to be saddled with burdens of building, you know, sports stadiums or overly taxed to build communities where you have private willing developers with private capital that can step in and really make it work without that type of support. So we look forward to seeing how the city comes down on this, and then we'll give a more concrete answer in the future.
Great, thank you, Ken. And that leads very well into our next question, and I'm going to keep you on the hot seat. It's again for all 4 teams. What is your vision for the Rays, and how do you view them within your proposal, and how do you view them working with them moving forward if you're selected?
So I get to start again?
You get to start again.
Okay, wonderful. So, you know, look, I've talked to the Rays ownership a lot, as has, I'm sure, a lot of the other developers in this call. We've talked to the executives there. And look, our view is that St. Petersburg is better with a baseball team and with a sports team than without one. I think that anytime you can add economic development to a city, it creates a ripple effect. It creates more jobs. More people come to downtown, which patronize the retail, which employ other people, and then they get to pay taxes, and then they get to, you know, buy cars and buy consumer goods in the stream of commerce. So I think that anytime you can add economic vitality to a downtown, whether it's a baseball team or any other type of big public attraction, I think that that's generally a good thing. I think that for me or anyone to sit here today and tell you that we know exactly what the Rays are going to do or what the mayor's office or the city council is going to do, I think that's a fool's errand right now. I think there's a lot that's still up in the air and a lot that remains to be seen. But my view and our team's view is that if we build a baseball stadium and the Rays want to stay here, we think that that can be a very, very viable economic opportunity for the city. To the extent that the Rays decide to not play baseball here and either only do part of a season here or move the team entirely out of St. Pete, we have another scenario for that as well. And that's why we've designed two different proposals here, one with and one without a stadium. I think either way, both of our plans offer a lot for the community in terms of programming, both with multifamily housing, office, retail, mixed use, parks. There's a lot to unpack on this development. And the good news is right now is that it's a bit of a blank slate. You've got 86 acres and you've got a canvas that you can paint. And there's not just one picture to paint with a baseball team. I think you can paint a picture with or without. And we're committed to looking at both of those scenarios to making a very good outcome for the citizens of St. Petersburg.
Great, thank you very much, Ken. Chuck, let's go to your response with Unicor. What is your vision for the Rays within your proposal, and how do you propose working with them if you're selected?
Sure. We all know the movie Field of Dreams, build it and they will come. Well, they only come when there's gains. So the development needs to sustain itself when there's no stadium there. The stadium needs to be a big plus. It needs to be the activator that happens during games, but yet it needs to be used for other events. It needs to be used for music festivals. Music festivals have become a big thing in our country now. We position the stadium so it really leads all the way out to the park. So it's not required to be part of a redevelopment, but it's great to have it as part of a redevelopment. Ball teams are great. They bring families together. It's a fun time. The problem is when ball teams are not playing games, then you get a big empty parking lot that you have now. So we need to make sure the development works with or without the team. We would love to have the team as part of it. Like one of our colleagues just said there, the problem you get into is how do you finance it? And you need to make it work. It shouldn't really come out of taxpayers' money. It needs to be financed through the billionaires who are involved in these businesses. They're the ones who ultimately benefit from it. So it should not be a stress on the public. They've already felt that pain, so I wouldn't want them to see it again. Yes, we would love to have a ball team there. I do not think a split season works. It's not functional to build $1 billion stadium up north somewhere and $1 billion stadium in Tampa. They're going to have to pick a home. And I think St. Petersburg would be a great home for them to stay at, and it would be a great redevelopment. But there needs to be an understanding with the team that it cannot just be active for major league games. It needs to be used for other purposes, and it could be used for youth in the area. It could be used for soccer during times when they're not playing. It could be used for music festivals. It could be used for marketplaces. In today's world, it needs to be integrated and used more often. We've experienced that in Orlando with the Orlando Magic. Business after businesses have opened, counting on the business from the Orlando Magic, and they're busy during game night, and then they're dead the rest of the time, and then a year or two they go out of business. We have to design this in a way that the businesses will always be successful with or without the ball team playing.
Great, thank you very much. Midtown, your vision for the Rays.
Hey, Brian, this is Randy. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Randy.
But you can't see me because my video is blocked by the host, and I won't take it personally, but could you help me out there?
Absolutely. Yeah. I apologize about that.
I would much rather look at Reverend Haynes, but I don't blame it. But let's, while we're getting ready to do that, now I think you can see me, right? Okay, great. So let's talk about development and certainty and what we do and don't know. We do know exactly the way the Rays operate today. We know their building, we know the way they're serviced, we know the way everything moves around there. And we've been able to craft a first phase that actually makes the stadium as it is better than it ever was, because we have something that we can work from. And so when we know more about the Rays, this is where I think what our team possesses, which is the creativity and the facility to take on assignments in the ever-changing nature of building cities, to create a place that feels right. We know when we talk to the Rays that they have their own idea about the way they'd like to do a stadium, whatever that is. They probably have architects in mind or a process in mind. They may even be thinking about a location, size. They're going to have a whole series of criteria, and they're going to become a new participant in the process, and we're going to get design criteria from them. And that's where we're at our best. so that as we listen to the community, and let me just tie together, say, the affordability question and neighborhood question to, most importantly, is what the place will feel like, the way we craft the shape and space and scale of the place, and what it will be like to be there at night. And it's fine with us when there are or aren't baseball games, but what it will be like to be there, what it will be like if I'm there for a convention, and how wherever the stadium ends up going, if it ends up going there, how we'll connect all the pieces on our site. That stadium is a big object. It will be the biggest object on our site, and is by far the largest piece of uncertainty. And so the way we're addressing it, Brian, is we're dealing with what we know is absolutely certain, and we're starting from there. And I'd love to hear from Reverend Haynes about his thoughts on baseball, and probably Walter as well, because I'd love to get Walter integrated into this conversation.
You know, having been one to have been relocated, you know, I was raised on third base. I spent all of my life in gas plant. Matter of fact, I was born and raised in St. Petersburg, so I've seen the changes. But what I've also seen is some cities that have transformed. When I went to Baltimore for the National Urban League Convention about 4 years ago, when I went to that convention, we were able to walk across the street from the convention center right to the Baltimore Stadium. And while there was a reception the night before the Baltimore Stadium, when we went back the next day, we were able to walk around and take advantage of the retail that was going on in that area. You know, I've got a raised baseball team executive, Melanie Lynch, who's on our Urban League board, who shows exactly what investment in this community is about, and that is that the Rays have contributed and that they continue to contribute. I think we can have the best of both worlds. But if the Rays decide that they want to do something else, I'm supportive of doing whatever we can to ensure to the African-American community, like me, that have been displaced, that something will be there to generate economic survival for the community for year after year after year, and not for one-shot deal.
Thank you, Watson. And Sugar Hill JMA, same question, your approach to working with the Rays and how they fit in your overall vision.
Great. So I guess this is the advantage of batting cleanup on this question. We get to try to bring everybody else home. Lot of good points made by the group. I also want to get Kurt Moody involved in this. Moody Nolan has worked on a lot of sports stadiums, so I'm just going to be quick and ask Kurt to jump in. First, I would say, and I think this was echoed by the other folks, that the city and the Rays have got to sort this out, right? I mean, we want to be helpful any way we can. This is right in our wheelhouse, and so we think we can be a good partner. But that deal's got to get made or not made, I think, really without the developer. The second, I think Ken might have said this, is the key is getting the team what they need to be successful, right? If the Rays are going to double down on St. Pete, we certainly hope that they will, and stay, then they're probably going to have some different expectations and requirements from what they have today. We find, having worked on a lot of these projects before, that there are two key design principles or planning principles. One is the idea, and somebody hit on this earlier, of the stadium can't be the sun and the mixed use, the planets will revolve around it, because the sun is dark too often on these kinds of projects. Even a baseball stadium, which is 81 games a year, assuming the Rays play all 81 here and not half in Montreal, that's just not enough. It's not enough to rely on. And I completely agree with that point. So the mixed use has to stand on its own 2 feet. The second is the idea of playing offense and defense. So somebody mentioned that's a lot of bodies, right? I think the Rays attendance last season, not last season, but 2019, last time they really had fans, was something like 1.2 million people a year. That's a significant economic opportunity that needs to be taken advantage of. But you also have to play defense, which means that you have a lot of other users for the development. I live here, I work here, I'm out on date night with my wife, and I'm not going to the game. Where when you have 25,000 people or 20 or 30,000 people who all show up within a couple of hours of each other, all want to leave within 15 minutes of each other, that kind of peakiness is unconventional. You have to make sure you're planning for it. And it has significant parking implications, ride share, pick up and drop off, all those things need to be very carefully considered. And the other piece here is that, Florida, I don't think I have to say this, is a flat state, right? We have some interesting topography on this site, particularly over the northeast corner, which allows us to tuck the building in a little bit so that it feels less like an aircraft carrier. Someone talked about the scale of these buildings. As much as you can get them to merge into the overall scale of the development, that's a real advantage. So Kurt, hopefully I left you a few minutes. You want to jump in and share some thoughts?
Oh, sure, David. One of the things that we find working coast to coast is that if there is the ability to have the raise there, the benefit you get is not just in the stadium and what it drives when you've heard many different opinions about vendors and concessions and businesses and church groups, matter of fact, offer a lot of concessions that they are partnering with in these stadiums. But another thing is that the players themselves, actually a number of them invest in the local community with local business to help create equity within the community that might not exist other than having them participate. We're working with 2 different professional players right now doing just that in their areas and where they have formed partnerships with local minority businesses to create equity programs. So that's a good potential also.
Great, thank you very much. We're going to switch topics now to community involvement. Again, a question for all 4 teams. Chuck, we'll start with Unicorp. If you're selected, how do you plan on engaging with the community to continue to receive and implement input on your design and your plan as you move forward in construction and ultimately finish with the development?
That's a great question. By listening, we found our best developments are when we listen to the community. We've had developments where we've gone in with ideas, and once we started having community meetings, there's been times where they didn't like them at all. And we would start from scratch and start over again. In this case, we've gotten a lot of direction from the RFP package and the points that we've all touched down on. So I think at this point now, it comes down to, can you collaborate with the community? I've done hundreds of community meetings over my careers. We've built lots of wonderful developments. I would urge the community to Google what we've done, and we've got a great reputation for bringing the community together in these type of developments. So our plan would be to start hosting a series of community meetings and physically engaging the community on one-on-one conversations and listening to what their ideas are, having them hear what our ideas are. And then eventually, like I said in the very beginning of my presentation, if I cannot finish this development and walk away where the community doesn't say, well done, then it's not the right development for us. We want to definitely be a community partner. We want the community to be happy with what we've done. I want to be able to come to the community and have everyone say, your team did a great job with this and something we can be proud of as developers. So it would start off by us setting up community meetings where we meet with local business owners. But aside from local business owners, we want to have community meetings where we bring in residences, people who live there. And we've done these many times in churches and, churches and in public facilities. So we'll set up a series of meetings, hear what the public has to say. We'll work with staff, continue to morph our plan into something that everybody nods their head on and says, this is what's right for the St. Pete community. And then we'll forge forward to develop that plan.
Great, thank you very much. David, let's go to Sugar Hill, JMA. How would you work with the community if you're selected throughout the entire process?
Sure. I'm going to talk just for 30 seconds here, and then I'm going to ask Sarah Jane to get involved. We mentioned in our presentation how important it is that this is viewed as a journey, not a destination. Community engagement and feedback shouldn't just happen during pre-construction or during initial planning. It should persist throughout the lifetime of the project. At a high level, the approach we're taking, and we've outlined this in our response to the RFP, is for each of our community benefits initiatives, we've identified community groups. We'll form a working group or committee with those community groups to figure out what our roadmap and our game plan is going to be for 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, et cetera, for each of those initiatives. So let me pause there. And Sarah Jane, why don't you jump in?
It's my pleasure. I worked on the community outreach piece because in my project that I worked on previously for my book, Where Have All the Mangoes Gone, which was my master's thesis at USF, I found that really the foundation of the project was my conversations that I had with the community. And that really informed what my project ended up being. And so I think this is exactly the process that we need to go through here. And so number one, we need to be early and thorough. We need to talk to people at the very beginning, middle, and end of the project. We need to be solutions oriented, and we need to commit to a sustained effort. It's not just a conversation that gets sort of lost. And yes, we check that box, we have that conversation. We need a feedback loop that allows residents to give input and share with us their thoughts and their feelings about what should happen there, a way to gauge that there's progress being made in that in that area. So we've chosen to have 2 community outreach facilitators, which are groups from the community. We've selected one community to lead the effort, and we'll engage in further talks with them as well, and the St. Petersburg Downtown Partnership. And we've divided up sort of into categories that align with our community benefits agreements that we put together. So we have an area concerning site programming where we've selected stakeholder groups, which we felt really represented what we would be looking for in programming the site that could really give us some good feedback. We've looked into workforce development, working groups, small business enterprise, affordable housing, arts and culture. Then we did a food security one, which we thought was very important as well, and equity participation. And so within each of those groups and categories, we've identified important stakeholder groups, and not the usual suspects that people always tend to ask, you know, as to what do you think about this? And then you've checked off an entire population because you asked this one person. We really went digging deep to see if we could identify all the groups that would have sort of different perspectives on that point.
Great.
Thank you, Sarah Jane. Oh, and then if we have 10 seconds left, I would just sort of mention again, Brian, you know, the developer hours concept that I described earlier, something we've used effectively in the past. We might not do it weekly. If we're fortunate enough to be selected, it might migrate to monthly, but the idea is that the door is always open, right? If somebody in the community wants to talk to us, they're going to be able to find us and they'll know exactly where to look.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Portman, Third Lake, same question. How will you engage with the community on receiving and implementing design input and input into your proposal if you're selected?
Yes, so look, I think all the answers that have been given so far are very good. I think, you know, as Sarah Jane said, early and thoughtful. I mean, that describes the right way to think about it. So we've done that so far. As soon as we knew that we were going to bid on this, we immediately started meeting with people in the community, members of the African-American community. Some of you who are on this call, we spent a lot of time together talking about what does that feedback loop look like. And it's not just a one and done thing, it's a continuous feedback loop. And so for me, as the chairman and CEO of our company, the reason that this is so important to me is because when I get up in the morning and I get in my car and I drive across the bridge, this is my hometown. And so, you know, I live in Tampa Bay. I'm in St. Petersburg literally 3 to 4 times a week. My partners all live in St. Petersburg. So for us, if we screw this up as a participant in this process, it's going to hurt deeply for us as people who live here. You know, I've lived here our whole lives. And so we want to make sure that we really get this community engagement piece really, really right. And so we've done this in other communities. I'm going to turn it over to Eric at HKS to talk about some of the other community engagement that he's only done, not on the Trop site back in 2016, but also in cities like Atlanta, Minneapolis, and other cities in California. So Eric, over to you.
Yeah, I think the misconception that most people have is that you do it one time in the beginning and that's it. And that's nice for outreach, but it's not engagement. Engagement is a perpetual long-term partnership with the local community. And you got to remember this development is going to happen over probably a 10-year time span, if not longer. So we don't want to just meet with everybody in the first 6 months, get everybody's ideas and then walk away and think we're developing everything that you asked us to develop, number one. Number two, needs are going to change over time. So we want to be thoughtful. We want to be mindful that there's going to be continuous touch points throughout the development process. We'll have to work with the community to figure out what that is. Is it a monthly meeting? Is it a quarterly meeting? Is it a time of a project that makes most sense? So we're going to work with the local groups, just like we did back in 2016, and figure out what it is that makes everybody feel like they're engaged. And we can't define that today. We'd love to. I'd love to be able to tell you exactly how we're going to do it, but there's too much at stake and there's too many voices that need to be heard. So we want to get that on the table and then talk about the long-term benefits of it.
Great. Thank you very much. Midtown?
Yeah, hey, Brian. Let me start. I hear a lot of talk about 2016, and it's when we all met, you, myself, Alan, the whole team there, when our team was selected. And if you remember, I was the point person for all of that. I held the mic at all the community meetings. I authored the plan for the stadium master plan. I then followed up and I held the mic for all of the community meetings for the effort without the baseball stadium, and developed and designed the master plan for the site without a baseball stadium. So I have been in front of all of these people now for 5 years, and they'll all recognize my face. And what they'll know and what they'll remember is our process of creativity with an outreach process that parallels our design process, where we talk to people in the community, we take their ideas and show them how they become designs and forms in a master plan. We then go back to them and we show them what that all meant. And we talk about what the design option is and go through a series of design options. And so we work that way, and it focuses on the public realm greatly. So I'd love to turn it over to Walter Hood and hear about the landscape architecture and public realm perspective. Walter?
Like in most democracies, I mean, participation is just key to bringing people in. And for us, what we value is this ability, to listen, as has been said, but also to begin to sort of use that information to create a different kind of civic engagement. Everyone's talked about kind of engaging over time, but I also think we have to get people invested in just different ways. And one is a very simple question: if participation happens in a lot of different places, why do they all look the same, right? And so that means that, people are listening, but they're not somehow incorporating, right, those ideas. And I think this place should be different. It should be idiosyncratic. It should have a different flavor. It should smell, taste, and look different. It should embrace that past. And that's what we have to do. And that's really, really difficult to do, because you have to throw away your previous biases, and you have to really allow those voices to come in and corrupt the way that we normally do the work. And our past is just laden, right, with a lot of promises and ways that we say people have engaged. And then the end results look differently. And so what we're interested in is engaging in a way so that what we manifest is sustainable, and the people that start out are still there in the future. And I'll turn it over to the Reverend, because I'm sure he'll just riff directly on that. Reverend.
Yes, and thank you, Walter. Your work is just so great, and I am so glad that you're part of our team, which shows we don't have to go and look and find somebody. The Urban League is 42 years old in Pinellas County. It's over 100 years old throughout this country. And so we don't have to go looking. When Midtown came to us, they sat down and they said, what do you want to see us do? They didn't tell us what they wanted to see. They asked us to question. And when we answered the questions and when we asked them questions, we were satisfied to the point that Midtown said this: let's have a signed agreement that keeps the Urban League involved in this process as long as it lasts. If it's 30 years, the Urban League is involved in the process. The same thing is what we've done for St. Petersburg College with the CBA agreement. When they built the college campus in the middle of Midtown St. Petersburg, they asked for 30% of African-American participation, the local participation. We delivered 40%. And so this thing is not new to us. It's something that we do all the day. We are part of the team. We're not on the side of the table. When it was time to talk about building housing, they asked us what? They asked us about the opinion of this, should this be involved with Booker Creek? And we said, absolutely, let's put it out front.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next topic. We're going to stay with Midtown. We're going to stay with your team, but we're going to move on to transportation. Again, a question for all four teams. Specifically like to ask your approach to parking. Parking on the site, obviously, development of this scale is going to generate a lot of parking needs. How are you going to approach that with your development? And how do you plan on integrating multimodal onto your site as well? What role does transit play? What role does bike facilities and bike share play? Kind of all different aspects of transportation. What is your approach to that, and how do you see that being integrated into your site?
Great, I'll kick it off. And St. Pete is a city that's growing up, and all cities that grow up have to face their transportation needs. And there's going to be less and less and less use of cars, and more different ways that people move around. Some will move larger numbers of people, say like bus or the future light rail. There'll be smaller ways that people move around on their bikes. And they'll also begin to work closer to where they live, and they'll be walking, and there'll be families walking. And so an entire transportation plan gets integrated into everything we do. When it comes to parking, the fewer cars we have, the fewer parking spaces we're going to need. And so we're going to be able to emphasize transportation and the way people move around and reduce their desire and necessity for cars, which also relates to the affordability issue, where there are certain communities where there's less car usage in the first place. So that we'll have to understand. So integrating cars and parking into transportation and prioritizing people is the key. And I think Ben maybe would be a good one to talk about this next.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of step off from our traditional thinking of transportation and note something that was in Midtown's proposal, and that's a mobility hub, including aspects related to keeping the door open for air mobility. That's an evolving topic in smart cities, smart city development. If we're talking about a development that's 20 to 30 years in the future, that'll last hopefully for a couple hundred years. After that, we've got to carve out areas for future technologies. And that's what Midtown's proposal does in its mobility hub, and thinking about future transportation options, including air mobility, which is evolving in Orlando, right next to our air sports. Yeah.
All right. The mobility hub is, for us, we think of it, Brian, more as a place rather than a building. And this is where things interchange, where I can ride my bike to get on a bus and I can make my way to the ferry. So I can use multiple modes to get around, which is multi-mode. And I can park my car and I can power my car. And I can use various ways to get around. And for us, it sits right at the headwaters of the creek, at the tip of beautiful Booker Park Creek, and ties right in to the entire public realm. So we see it as a great civic gesture.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Portman Third Lake.
Brian, I'll take this one. So we do a lot of research nationally on parking and what is the future of cars and driving in the United States and really around the world. And, we know it's changing. And so long story short, how do we build into the plan? We have to go in with parking garages initially, right? Because that's what we do. We drive to get there. How did you guys get to home tonight? But in the future, is that going to be the case? Is it going to be driverless vehicles? So we've done a lot of research on that and tied in. How do you build parking garages for not the use they are today, but what are they used for tomorrow, and building that flexibility? So that's one aspect of this. Another aspect is just tying in with everything. So you got to phase in the parking. So you don't want to do, if you built out that whole site with parking, ends up being parking garages and there's no program or nothing else there in order just to support the stadium alone. So you really have to be smart about phasing of the project. Build the office with shared parking with the residential, shared parking with the churches, shared parking with the retail. So you're cutting down on parking, not just over parking everything that's throughout the whole site. And then, there's different scales of transportation from pedestrian. This really isn't a far walk, and I think everybody on this call knows it, isn't a far walk at all from the shoreline, but it feels like a long way. There's that last mile that's there. That's really key as things develop beyond, the bus rapid transit and the things that are being put in place with the city that we can really take advantage of. The multimodal hub, those are definitely aspects of this, but really capturing that last mile and working with the city to do that, it's really easy site to get to. It's really walkable. It's just as perception as it's not. So there's a number of different ways to kind of go on and take on parking. But really, you got to have that foresight and kind of change of how do we not just make the whole site parking to accommodate the raise, which it is now.
Great. Thank you very much. Sugar Hill.
Thanks, Brian. I'm going to pass the mic over to Adam Carnegie at Stantec. Adam.
Hi, everyone. This is Adam Carnegie. The mixed use nature of this site is really going to allow for us to efficiently meet parking demands, because shared parking is such a wonderful asset to have. Office uses peak in the day, while the residential and hotel and other parking demands are going to peak in the evening. So while we understand that the single user automobile is dwindling, there still remains this demand, and how is one going to efficiently deal with it on site? Shared parking is critical, and really getting into the weeds on that and understanding how we can minimize shared parking and have intelligent parking structures to deal with that shared parking, that's going to be critical. Another thing is parking's got to be at market rates. We can't subsidize parking, not with a community asset of this magnitude. We have to disperse it into smaller multiple garages and small fields in the interim. We have to make it available to the general public. For example, we've resolved that, we're not going to have reserved parking dominate the parking scenario within our project. Integrating that with surrounding parking and transportation network is to really understand beyond our site what parking is available and how we don't duplicate that. And then spreading that parking access across various roadway access points so that you don't have congestion that results from overparking a particular portion of the site. So those are all some very specific strategies that we're going to employ to deal with parking.
Great. Thank you,
The
Adam.
only thing I would quickly add to that, Brian, is, just to echo what we heard a little bit earlier, the trend lines in parking are radically changing, right? The extent to which rideshare, for example, now has to be considered and incorporated on these kinds of large scale projects is completely different than what was happening as little as 5 or 6 years ago. Opportunities to continue to promote use of bicycles. So Pinellas Trail runs right through the site. St. Pete is already a very bike-friendly community. We see opportunities through bike sharing programs, scooter sharing programs to really continue to drive that to the benefit, not just of this project, but of the community. And then there are simpler things we can do. So for example, in residential buildings, having 4, 6, 8 electronic house cars that can be rented by an app on your phone that you can reserve for 6 hours or 8 hours or 2 hours, in lieu of requiring someone to feel like they have to go get their own vehicle, take up a stall all the time and only utilize it maybe at a 5% rate, right? There are a lot of creative things here that can be done at an operational level. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Chuck, the floor is yours.
I am going to give the floor to the world's greatest architect, Bernard Ziskovich in Surya. It is yours.
Thank you, Chuck. I think there have been a lot of really good comments made so far in regard to mobility, the hub, the connectivity. But I think that my recent experience in our firm has been for the last 3 years working with Facebook in the Bay Area of San Francisco to deal with their biggest issue, which is how to connect people. We've done it throughout different cities there. And one of the things I've learned, and several people have already mentioned this, is parking is not in the future what we think it is today. So what we've done in our plan is to really design the plan around walkability, bicycle connectivity, the existing bike plans. We've even talked about tearing down a piece of I-175 to continue the parkway down to the downtown and the water so that we can truly make a connected space. So parking needs to be thought about from 2 different points of view. One is every day, the other is in the event of the ballpark. So if you look at our phasing plan very well, what you'll see is that our phase 1 anticipates the building of parking structures to be able to release the parking spaces currently needed by the Rays so that we can actually have room to do more and more development. Several people have mentioned the importance of shared parking. There's many different ways to do that with ULI. But I think one thing we know for sure, and I can tell you from our experience working with very progressive companies in our recent Facebook experience, is that The driverless cars, the automated pods. I don't know if you've seen these. The future has not only mass transit, but individual pod transit that's currently being developed. So what we're thinking is the most important thing we could do would be to not only accommodate the parking, but design the neighborhood as a campus so that as you move through the space, you're really without the need of having the parking. One of the most significant statistics of every urbanized area is as you bring in more people in a concentrated area, especially in a place like St. Pete, where you have all these burgeoning neighborhoods, the dependence on cars diminishes. And the dependence on walking and biking and other forms actually increases, which is why the parking in our view needs to mostly be concerned with accommodating the rays, with the flushing in of thousands of cars and the flushing out. And we're intending to keep those at the perimeter of the site so that they don't interfere with the everyday neighborhood activities.
Great, thank you, Bernard. So we are getting fairly close to our hour. I still have two topics I really want to hit on. So I'm going to ask for the next two questions to limit your response to a minute. We'll kind of just call this a version of the lightning round. David, we're going to start with Sugar Hill JMA. How is renewable energy integrated into your design?
Let's see, we got a minute. Adam, you want to tackle this one? You're on mute. Adam, you're on mute.
Thanks. At Stantec, we have several different folks who are leaders in this area, and whose input will be brought to bear on this question. There are, certainly opportunities for on-site storage. Our sustainability people have a whole series of strategies that they apply depending on the scalability of them. The one thing that is good about this project is that it recommends itself to district-wide approaches because it scales so highly. So that, for example, district cooling, which, there's not only renewable energy, there's also reducing the energy. There's reducing the energy that the conventional energy even that is used on this site. And because we have opportunity for district level solutions such as district cooling and so on, which, by the way, Johns Hopkins uses right down the street, which we're working on right now. And Voltaire is working on that along with us, one of our partners on this team. We'll be able to bring a lot of those various strategies to bear. David, there may be others who want to pitch in on this one.
Thank you, Adam. That's our time. So we will now move to Chuck and Unicorp. Same question. How is renewable energy integrated into your design? You have 1 minute.
Surya, I'd like to hand this off to you.
Well, our approach to renewable energy is going to be integrated into each development phase of each project. We're looking at LEED as well as a well design approach that is going to help with issues of health and wellness for those who live here and those who participate in the activities that our development is going to provide. But in general, what we have seen is in projects is that we really want to be respectful, use the best systems that are out there possible in order to be able to use the least amount of energy. And an approach to water conservation, an approach to health and wellness that is going to be connected to a sustainable approach for the overall project in this case.
Great, thank you very much. Midtown, same question.
There you go. I'm going to turn it over to Liz Galindo. Okay, I'll turn it over to Chris Durham.
Yeah, hi, can everybody hear me?
There we go, there we go, there she is.
Liz, she's frozen.
Liz, please take it.
The approach renewal. I frozen.
Can't
Hello?
hear.
Highlight about this. So approach for the Creekside renewables.
Is Chris on?
Hi, I'm going to take it from here. So our design, we design our buildings to meet and exceed the U.S. Department of Environmental Standards, Energy Standards. We have a team of lead professionals that will assist in design, and then utilize local resources. Providing power from renewable resources. Looking at a percentage of about 10% of providing that power for our development. From the renewable energy sources. Also looking at, different environmental or different design things here for like microcell technologies and other technologies to improve energy efficiency.
Great, thank you, Christopher. Portman Third Lake?
Sure, Brian, I'll take it. Kind of energy is one of those passions I have, and I think it's definitely going to change. There's what we could do today with renewable energy, and there's what we can do 10 years from now. And it is going to evolve in a way that I don't think we can even predict right now. With that, there's projects that we're working on overseas where if as a car or a pedestrian walks on the sidewalk, it generates power for the city grid and powers the street lights. Those are the things that are slowly being implemented, and the technology is coming down in cost because of that. Georgia Tech's doing a ton of research here on that, exactly that type of information. But that's in the future. I think the stuff that the kind of low-hanging fruit of what we're doing now is all the parking garages have solar panels on them, which makes so much sense in that area. We're, as much as we can, optimizing the facades of the buildings, where they face south or southwest, using that for solar panels. And that's just for energy. Let alone talking about green roofs and it being able to support the community with the food that's grown, biofilterization with the landscape and the storm.
Shelby, I think you got cut off at the end there. You want to finish your thought?
Sorry about that. Yeah, and I said, and stormwater collection that's going on throughout, and also just EV solar powered cars throughout the parking garages, just built into everything. I mean, more and more, that's kind of what we're seeing everywhere. So
great, thank you very much. All right, the last question, I fibbed. We're not going to give you a minute. We're going to give you 3 because it's too important to just cram it into a minute. So I'd like you to talk about your team's approach to equity, to inclusion, any experience that you've had with community benefit agreements. Where have you done that in other projects? How has that worked? What have you seen to be successful? And I'd like to start with Midtown.
Okay, Alex, would you like it, or you want to start with Reverend?
I think the Reverend would be best since he's local.
He's good at everything. And then Walter, please.
I think he had to step out. Maybe Walter can discuss a little bit.
This is the question. The question was equity within the team?
Equity and inclusion, your approach to equity and inclusion with the community, with your design, with your development, and if you'd like to address community benefit agreements, how you've worked with those in the past, and what you would view as success.
Walter, if you want, just touch base on design, and I'll touch base on the rest.
Yeah, well, I think the equity and inclusion starts, I think, just with our team in the beginning. I think our team needs to reflect, right, the communities in which we work. So I think when you look at our team, I think we are composed of a reflection of what we think the citizenry is here. I think also through equity, we talked a lot about community participation, but that also means that we actually, really go beyond, I guess, the context of bringing people to the table. And a lot of the times when we think of equity, we only think of race, but equity also means looking at people, who have different disabilities, possibly looking at gender and other types of ways of representation. And I think having that kind of full representation at the table will create a context, I think, for difference. And I think what we're looking for is difference, not just diversity. We're looking for difference. And I think, again, when you bring those things together, I think people then can look at that product and feel responsible.
I think just that, I think right now how it stands, you know, people from St. Petersburg drive by the site and they can say one of two things, either, you know, oh, that's the Trop site. I go to the baseball game there, or that's the Trop site. And I used to live there, or my ancestor used to live there. I think the story here is how to have multiple people be, everyone from St. Peter be able to drive by the site and say, you know, I live there, although, you know, the reality is a small percentage, maybe 10, you know, of the people that are listening in will actually live there, but then a bigger percentage be able to say, I work there. But even a bigger percentage say, I own a business there, or my son or my daughter owns a business there. And I think that's the key. A project that embarks to as many people as possible. And I think that's why I started with Walter, just because, you know, first Watson that he couldn't join, but then Walter, because on the public spaces, that's something where everyone will be able to participate and enjoy and meet people. I think the highlight of my career was when someone, random person that I met on the street said, oh, you're Alex Padilla. I met my wife at your dog park. That was the highlight of my career, just to summarize. And that's what we're trying to accomplish in many ways, shapes and forms here.
One other thing, Alex, just to add, I mean, I do think, you know, Alex was just saying this, but people need to feel comfortable in these spaces, like they belong. And, you know, this is easier said than done. You know, looking at myself, I can walk into some spaces where I do not feel comfortable in public spaces. And it's because the way they're designed. They're designed in ways that make me feel uncomfortable. So when we think of equity, I think, again, with gender, with other types of groups, we have to sort of go beyond the norm and actually bring people in and make people comfortable.
Thank you. Sugar Hill.
Great, thanks, Brian. So I'll kick this off, and then I'm going to throw it over to Thomas Huggins, who's our lead on inclusion. So with respect to community benefits agreements, I'm honestly trying to think of a large-scale project we've worked on that has not had a CBA. We're very familiar with that approach, what the various elements tend to be, but we've done projects in New York City, in Cincinnati, in Houston, in San Francisco, and Sacramento that have all had a significant CBA framework in place. So that's something that we're very familiar with and comfortable with. And I think in the spirit of what we talked about earlier with respect to community benefits broadly, that's where we're advocates for something that persists over the life of the project. With respect to equity, you know, to sort of draft behind what Walter said, which I completely agree with, you know, the way that we think about equity is opportunity, right? Are there good jobs here? Are there affordable places for my family and I to live? Am I represented and included? Are there business opportunities? Can I set up shop there and be successful? Is there training, support, and guidance if I'm a local guy that'll support me? And can I participate in all ways? And I like what was said about, you know, do I belong here, right? And then that is a multifaceted and multidisciplinary issue. It's how you design, it's how you program, it's how you operate. All those things matter. You know, we have Roy Binger and Reverend Murphy involved as full partners on our affordable housing piece. We've also committed to allocating a portion of our LP pool so that qualified local investors of color can participate in the project. That's actually consistent with a model that we've used on a project previously. So, you know, in our view, all the doors need to be open. I think that's consistent with our approach. So, Thomas, you want to jump in?
Sure. Thank you, David. When we were originally approached about this project, I'm really excited about this because typically you have a development that comes in and they really only focus on one aspect of inclusion, that's construction. And as you've heard all along that the city, there's been promises broken and promises made. Our goal here with the Sugar Hill team is to look at equity and inclusion throughout the entire development of this project. And so if you look at our team as it stands today, you look at the equity, you look at the individuals that's included on this team, African-Americans, African-American business owners, women, others that's included on this project. So we start out the equity and inclusion component throughout from the beginning, and it's not an afterthought. We are looking to include throughout our construction. You heard from Ernie at Ducon in the construction aspect of it. So we looked at an inclusion component that includes both the development, the architecture, engineering, the design, as well as the construction, as well as the leasing space. And so when we look at this opportunity, we look at the fact that Sugar Hill is the only team that's able to come in and show the inclusivity of its team throughout the duration of the project. And so I appreciate the opportunity, and we look forward to working with the folks in the city of St. Petersburg.
Thank you, Thomas. Portman Third Lake.
I'm going to take that. This is Hunter Richardson. I think this is a deep subject. It covers a lot of ground. I will start off with Walter. I like what you said about, going in space. I think that one of the keys from our perspective is no development is successful until it's the development. Oh, I understand, got that connection.
Hunter, I think if we were hearing you better as you looked up, I think.
Is that better?
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I was going to say, to take on what Walter was saying, no project is successful unless it's embraced by the community. It's really important that every project be a community's project and not a developer's project. With that said, prior to me joining Portman, I was involved with the development of the Phillips Arena for the Atlanta Hawks back in the late 1990s. Working with the city of Atlanta, we were able to achieve a 36% MWBE participation on that project. And that was a combination of the ownership and a combination of the contractor and the design team. And so it really did work to engage the full community. We're in the process at the moment of working with MARTA on a mixed-use development in downtown Atlanta. We're working extensively with their diversity and inclusion department with a drive toward disadvantaged businesses and how we engage those throughout the entire process, starting with the design and construction and taking it all the way through the operation. So it does not end when we open the doors. And so with that, we're accustomed to working with these issues. Not going to sit here and pretend to tell you that we have all the answers, because there are a lot of unknowns in this business deal relative to what the city's expectations are. We've taken the approach that we were going to come at this, and if we were so lucky as to get the award, then we would work with all the various business communities to figure out what the right solution is relative to diversity and inclusion at all stages of the project. And so we're committed to that, but we're not going to pretend that we know the answers at this juncture, because there's too many unknowns. But we're excited about including the community and making sure that this is a community-driven project that satisfies the needs of the community and corrects some of the ills of the past.
Thank you, Hunter. Unicorp?
Yes, Lashante, I'm going to let you take it first, and then I'd like the last 30 seconds, a minute to close if I could.
Most definitely. As far as inclusivity, that's what they do. Inclusivity has worked with a number of individuals already in the city of St. Petersburg dealing with equity. I think inclusivity has worked with the city of St. Petersburg, worked with the Chamber of St. Petersburg, worked with the Sheriff's Department of St. Petersburg, and they've worked with a variety of individuals to address equity in those communities and in those populations. And so for Unicorp, it's very, very important that we definitely address it, that we are going to address it. Again, we are here as a partner to Unicorp, but we're also here to hold them accountable for to make sure that we are doing equitable work. I think somebody put it perfectly. Equity doesn't just stop with just race. There's an ADA factor that needs to be accounted for. There also needs to be LGBTQ plus community that needs to be accounted for. So equity is going to be a variety of things that we want to ensure that is happening. And so again, we are here to make sure we're inclusive, and we just want to make sure that the community understands that we want to work with them and just get everything right that people couldn't do in the past. In addition, there's a group of entrepreneurs, especially there's a lot of African American females who are entrepreneurs in the city who are not getting their light, and we want to make sure that they get their light as well, because they're doing great things in the community as well. And so that is another opportunity for us to actually engage and make sure that everybody has the same resource. Not everybody has the same resources, but we give everybody resources to get to that level, because again, that's what equity is all about. Chuck.
Yes, for us, for me, this is an exciting opportunity. We all know what's happened in the past, and we've got an example with this wonderful piece of property to set an example in the entire nation to show how we can be inclusive, how we can all do something great together, how we can assemble a great team, and white people, Black people, Latin people, females, all sorts of different people, and come up with a great development. So we've got a team comprised of all sorts of individuals that we're going to prove to not only St. Petersburg, not only to the local neighborhoods, but we're going to be able to prove to the nation that we're going to take this $1 billion development and say, hey, this is what people can do when they work together. So that's our goal, is to bring people together. All along, I told you from the very beginning, I want to walk out of this development once it's complete in a decade and have people say, well done, look what the community did when they came together. So that's our goal. We have the right team to do it, and we can certainly deliver on it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chuck. With that, that'll conclude our questions and answers. I'd like to thank everyone that submitted their questions. We received over 60 questions, so certainly we have quite a few more for the teams on Wednesday and Thursday, and we look forward to hearing from them again in our in-person meetings at the Coliseum. Thank you very much to the teams for your responses and your thoughtfulness in responding to these questions. And with that, I'll turn it to Alan for concluding thoughts.
Brian, thank you very much. Great job with the questions. And yes, just an exciting conversation. We all might be getting tired, but this is exhilarating stuff to be talking about this with you, with all the experts, all the great minds, all the experience that you bring to the table. Thank you very much for that. I do want to thank the marketing department, who did a fantastic job helping us put this together. I do want to thank Sophia Sorolis and Brian Caper from my team. I want to thank the mayor for giving us this opportunity, bringing this along, having this conversation in the community. We will have 2 additional meetings. Again, Wednesday and Thursday, those will be live meetings at the Coliseum. You do have to register if you are planning to attend. We do have showrooms that we've set up across the city for individuals, residents to go into these showrooms, read the proposals from the developers. There's an executive summary from each developer. And a video that has been produced. And I want to thank all the teams for doing that video. We're going to continue to have our email system in place so residents can access the website, the city's website, and send an email to us about their thoughts about what they heard tonight. If your question wasn't asked, you can pose it through there. Again, we do have 2 additional nights, so we hope we can get to all the questions. We will do individual meetings with each development team, with the city staff team that we've put together, the review team. We've got 26 members on that review team, and we'll be setting up those meetings later on this month. And the mayor and the mayor's team will be meeting with each developer as well. And by May, the mayor could be in a possible situation to announce his preferred developer. So basically, we've got 1 more month of solid discussion, conversations, interacting with council members, clearly getting their input on all of this. But lastly, I just want to thank everybody that is attended. And, looking at this, I'm amazed that we still have about 200 people on the call. We had 350 to start. And a lot of you stuck with us all this time. So thank you very much for participating and listening and staying involved, throughout this meeting. So I will close the meeting up. Thank everybody once again and look forward to talking to all of you again Wednesday night.